Visually, these episodes are nothing short of stunning. The animation quality has somehow managed to outdo Season 1, which was already gorgeous. The line work feels cleaner, the lighting more cinematic, and the backgrounds absolutely glow with detail. There's a noticeable polish in how scenes transition, the movement is smoother, and the visual storytelling stronger. Heaven, for example, looks breathtaking. It's not the flawless paradise you'd expect. It's filled with cracks, symbolism, and fading brilliance that perfectly reflect its inner turmoil. The golden hues dim slightly during arguments. The clouds darken subtly when tension rises. Meanwhile, hell is brighter than ever, chaotic, colorful, and alive, yet hiding something sinister under its vibrance. The contrast between the two realms isn't just visual, it's thematic. Heaven feels cold despite its light, and hell feels warm despite its darkness. It's clever, layered, and visually poetic. And then there's the sound design, something that deserves more credit. Every echo, every bit of static from Vox's broadcasts, every faint hum from Velvet's magic adds to the tension. The series has always had great audio, but now it feels purposeful. You can hear when a moment is meant to be funny, eerie, or heartbreaking, not just from the music, but from the tiny sound cues built into the world. When Alistair disappears, that drop in sound, that brief, deafening silence, speaks louder than any line of dialogue could. The series uses silence like an instrument, and it's brilliant. Character-wise, Season 2 does an incredible job deepening everyone's arcs. Charlie is still the optimistic heart of the story, but now we're starting to see cracks in her idealism. She's learning that saving souls isn't just about kindness, it's about endurance. Her emotional moments hit harder because they're no longer innocent, they're desperate. She's realizing that hope has consequences. Baggy, too, feels more complex. Her fear and frustration don't make her unsupportive, they make her real. The emotional scene between her and Charlie in Episode 1 is easily one of the highlights of the entire show so far. You can sense the love and exhaustion in her voice, that quiet plea for reassurance that maybe everything they're doing isn't for nothing. The chemistry between them feels mature now, less romanticized, more grounded. Vox, meanwhile, continues to prove why he's one of the best-written antagonists in modern animation. He's charismatic, terrifying, and disturbingly relatable. His manipulation of media, his obsession with control, and the way he turns lies into power make him feel almost too real. What's scary about Vox is that he doesn't need to fight anyone physically. He just changes the narrative. By controlling what hell believes, he wins without lifting a finger. His presence looms over every scene, even when he's not on screen. The show doesn't rush to show all his cards, but the hints are enough to tell us that his ultimate goal goes far beyond fame or revenge. There's a hidden layer to his plan, something deeper, darker, and possibly connected to Alistair's disappearance. It's classic has-been hotel, giving us just enough to speculate without ever confirming too much. Velvet's new powers, meanwhile, add a fascinating twist to the dynamics among the Vs. What looked like playful mischief in Season 1 now carries genuine menace. Her glitch-like abilities feel unpredictable and chaotic, mirroring her personality perfectly. One minute she's joking and smirking, and the next, she's bending the very fabric of Hell's energy around her. It's visually breathtaking, but also deeply unsettling, because it shows that Velvet isn't just the comic relief of the trio. She's evolving into something far more dangerous. Her chemistry with Vox is intriguing too. It's not loyalty, it's tension disguised as teamwork. You get the sense that she's watching him as much as he's watching her. If Season 2 keeps building this power struggle, it could easily become one of the most compelling dynamics in the show. And then there's Alistair, the absence that defines everything. His disappearance isn't just a plot point, it's a wound that the story keeps poking at. You can feel his shadow in every scene, from the awkward silences between the hotel staff to the flickering radio static that occasionally hums in the background. It's like he's still there, just out of reach, watching, or maybe trapped somewhere darker. What makes it even more eerie is that no one truly understands what happened to him. Was he taken? Did he leave willingly? The uncertainty makes it so much more chilling. It's not just about losing a friend. It's about realizing that even the most powerful beings in hell aren't safe. And for a show that thrives on chaos, that's a terrifying realization.
Episode 1 doesn't waste any time showing us that life outside the ranch isn't any easier.
After accepting Pete's offer, Casey is introduced to the world of the U.S. Marshals, and the atmosphere is different from anything we've seen him in before. There is no legacy here, no land to protect, no family name hanging over his head. Here, a man is judged by what he can do, and Casey's past becomes both his strongest weapon and the one thing that could destroy him. The Marshal's office in Montana is not polished or grand. It feels raw, practical, built by people who know that justice in this land isn't neat. Brett Cullen's character, Harry G. Ford, the head of the Marshals in the region, sees something in Casey right away. Not just talent, but weight. He recognizes a man who knows violence not as a theory, but as a memory. And instead of seeing that as a danger, he sees it as necessity. In this world, justice is not delivered in a courtroom. It happens in fields, mountains, barns, and lonely roads where the law is only as strong as the person carrying it. Pete and Casey's reunion hits differently. It's not emotional in the traditional sense. There are no dramatic embraces or heavy monologues. Instead, you can feel history in the silence between them, two men who once depended on each other to stay alive. Pete knows Casey better than most people ever did, even better than those on the ranch. He knows the version of Casey who survived places most people don't come back from. And he knows that Casey doesn't fear death half as much as he fears losing the people he loves. The dynamic between them carries warmth, but it also carries an unspoken truth. Both men are running from something. Pete may act lighter, more relaxed, but his eyes tell their own story. And Casey sees it. This shared understanding becomes the foundation of their partnership in the Marshals. Casey's first mission isn't a dramatic shootout or high-speed chase. Instead, it is something small but unsettling. A missing persons case in the wide-open valleys of Montana, land that looks peaceful but hides secrets beneath every shadow. The locals don't trust the Marshals, and the Marshals don't trust the locals. And Casey is caught in between because he understands both sides. He knows what loyalty means out here. He knows what silence can hide. He knows that justice and survival are often the same thing wearing different faces. As he investigates, he moves through the land the way a cowboy would, watching, listening, noticing the kind of details that come from growing up with the earth beneath your feet. He's no longer a rancher, but that part of him never left, and that becomes his greatest advantage. But this mission also reopens something in him, a memory, a pain, a reminder of loss. The case involves a young woman gone missing, and the fear on her family's faces strikes too close to home. Tate's worry echoes through Casey's mind at every turn. The thought of being the one on the other side, the one waiting for news, shakes him more than any threat ever could. The show doesn't say this directly. It lets the silence speak. Casey doesn't talk much in this episode. Instead, his expression does the work. Luke Grimes plays him with a kind of restrained heartbreak that feels real, heavy, and familiar to anyone who has tried to function while grieving. Every moment of the investigation feels like Casey is learning how to breathe again, one step at a time. Meanwhile, Tate is trying to understand this new version of his father. He watches Casey getting ready for work, cleaning his boots, checking his gear, moving with routine precision. And Tate can see that his father is holding himself together, not because he is fine, but because he has no other choice. There's a quiet moment near the end of the section where Tate asks Casey if he's scared. Casey doesn't lie. He simply says, yes. And that honesty creates something healing between them. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It is real. Father and son learning how to be in the world again without the person who held them both together. This section of the episode builds tension slowly, like a storm forming on the horizon. We can feel something coming, something big. The missing persons case is not just a case, it is the thread that begins to unravel a much bigger conflict. Something criminal, something organized, something that has roots deep in the Montana backcountry. Justice in these lands has always been complicated. But now Casey is not protecting a ranch. He is protecting an entire territory where the line between right and wrong is thin enough to disappear. We watch Casey step deeper into the Marshal life, not because he wants glory, not because he wants power, but because he needs purpose. He needs something to keep him from drowning in memory. And for the first time, we see him choose to fight not to escape his pain, but to move through it. The transformation is not loud, but it is powerful. Episode 1 establishes that Casey is not running anymore. He is carrying his past, facing his grief, and walking straight into the fire. And this is only the beginning. As episode 1 continues, the missing persons case begins to reveal its first cracks, and this is where the world of why Marshals opens up into something much larger, darker, and more unpredictable than we expected. The case isn't random. It's not just someone wandering off or running away. There's a pattern, subtle at first, but Casey notices it long before anyone else does. The girl who disappeared has ties to a local ranching family that has been quietly struggling, not with money, but with pressure. The kind of pressure that comes when powerful people want something from you and won't take no for an answer. Casey recognizes the signs because he has lived that life himself under the Dutton name, where land, legacy, and survival were all tangled together. This familiarity makes him dangerous to the people responsible. Not because he's emotional, but because he understands the rules of this world in a way that law enforcement usually doesn't. The further Casey and Pete follow the trail, the more it becomes clear that this isn't about one missing girl. It's about a criminal network operating under the surface, hidden beneath ordinary ranch operations, moving people and goods without leaving obvious traces. These aren't outsiders. These are locals, people who know the land, know the roads, know the silence, people who know how to disappear in plain sight. And this is where we see Casey step into his role not just as a cowboy, not just as a soldier, but as a tracker. The quiet, observant, calculating side of him comes forward. He notices print in the dirt where most would see nothing. He recognizes patterns of movement in livestock that indicate human interference. He reads the land like a page. And Pete, watching him work, is reminded of the Casey he used to know, the one who could survive anywhere, with or without backup. Meanwhile, Tate begins to adjust, though the adjustment comes with its own complications. Living without Monica has created a space in their home that feels like an open wound, one that neither of them quite knows how to treat. Tate spends more time alone, sketching, sitting on the porch, walking the edges of the property as if trying to feel his mother in the wind or the grass. But there is also a shift happening in him. He watches his father not fall apart, but quietly rebuild. And that gives him something to hold on to, even if he's still scared, even if the grief is still raw. Casey tries to be there for him in small ways, conversation over simple meals, quiet moments of shared silence, the kind of presence that doesn't need words. The show doesn't dramatize their relationship. It keeps it real, grounded, human, and that might be one of the strongest emotional anchors of the entire story going forward. Back in the Marshal investigation, Casey meets another key character, Miles, played by Tatanka Means. Miles is a local law enforcement agent who has seen firsthand how justice gets twisted in rural Montana, and he carries his own past scars. He respects Casey instantly. Not because Casey is famous, not because of the Dutton name, but because he recognizes a man who has walked through fire and didn't let it turn him cold. Their partnership develops quietly but powerfully, built on understanding rather than words. And this becomes important because the case begins to point towards something that touches native land, tribal jurisdiction, and historical tension that has been ignored for generations. Thomas Rainwater and Mo Brings Plenty return in this moment, not as side characters, but as people with real stakes in the world Casey is stepping into. Their presence is not nostalgic. It is necessary. They know what is being threatened. They know the cost of allowing silence to continue. The episode intensifies when Casey and Pete find something in an abandoned barn. A piece of evidence so small that most would overlook it, but Casey knows what it means. It's a sign that the missing girl was not taken randomly. She was chosen, and that implies planning. That implies power. That implies organization. And that is when the tone shifts. the quiet tension becomes a slow-burning danger. Casey isn't just dealing with criminals. He's dealing with people who believe they are untouchable, people who believe the law belongs to them. This discovery forces Harry Gifford, the Marshals commander, to make a choice: get involved deeper and risk escalating into conflict, or step back and pretend the situation is contained. But Casey doesn't wait for permission. He has already stepped forward, not recklessly, not out of anger, but because he knows that if he doesn't act, someone else will disappear next. And he can't let another child be taken, not in this land, not in his watch, not after everything he has already lost. Meanwhile, whispers begin. People in town recognize Casey. They see the badge, they see the name, and some welcome it, some resent it, some fear it. The past has not forgotten him. And we can feel that the past is coming, not quietly, not gently, but like a storm ready to break. This is where episode 1 begins to show its true scale. This is not a story about one man healing. It is a story about the land, the law, and the battle between what is right and what is allowed. Casey has stepped into a role that demands everything from him: strength, patience, and the willingness to walk into darkness knowing not everyone comes out. And that darkness is about to open wider. The deeper Casey steps into the case, the more it becomes clear that justice in Montana is not just about enforcing the law, but confronting the people who believe they are the law. Episode 1 uses this realization to slowly build a sense of unease, a growing tension that sits under every scene. Casey and Pete follow the trail to a remote part of the valley where the land feels forgotten, untouched by most except those who know how to use isolation to their advantage. The missing girls' tracks lead them to an old homestead that has been abandoned for years, a place that looks like it was left behind by time itself. But Casey senses something wrong the moment he steps on the property. The silence is too thick, the air feels too still, and the land carries signs of recent movement: faint footprints, fresh tire marks, broken brush. Nothing is obvious, but everything is intentional. The kind of intentional that only comes from people who know exactly how to hide. Inside the house, Casey finds something that stops him cold: a small drawing taped to the inside of a cabinet door. A child's drawing. At first it seems unrelated, but the way it is placed, the way it is preserved, feels personal, almost ritualistic. It's a drawing of a girl holding hands with someone, but the other figure is scribbled out with heavy black lines. The image doesn't need to be explained. It says, enough. Someone doesn't want this girl to be remembered with whoever she once was. Someone wants to erase her story. And that realization shakes Casey because he knows what it means to have memories taken from you. He knows what it means to lose the pieces of life that made you whole. The weight of that drawing settles into him like a stone. Meanwhile, Tate continues to fight his own internal battle back home. Even though he's surrounded by love and familiarity, the world feels different without Monica. The home feels quieter. The nights feel longer. He watches his father leave early in the morning, return late, sometimes dirt still on his boots, eyes tired from more than just work. Tate is old enough now to understand that pain doesn't always show up in tears. Sometimes it shows up in stillness, in silence, in someone trying too hard to be okay. And that realization scares him more than anything. He doesn't want to lose his father, not to death, but to emptiness. The fear of being left behind emotionally is just as real as the fear of being left behind physically. And in one of the most powerful emotional moments of the episode, Tate sits beside Casey at the dinner table, neither speaking, but sharing the same heavy air. And you can feel that both of them are hanging on to each other, not through words, but through presence alone,